Hi guys, welcome to the next episode of implementing simple HTTP server in Java from scratch. Let's go. So last time we read requests but without a request body. So let's start our server and let's refresh what we have written. Okay, and if we go and make a GET request, we have a hard-coded response, and we can see method, URL, and headers. Alright, so let's refresh how the HTTP request should look like. So we have request line, headers, and a body. And right now, unfortunately, I choose to read it through buffered reader, which expects to have text input, and in HTTP 1.1 and HTTP 1, the request, the head of the request, so the request line and headers are ASCII encoded, but the body is just a stream of bytes. So we may have problems with that, and because of it, I think that better idea is to read it as stream of bytes, not as text input. So that's why that's what we need to refactor first. And also I don't think it's described here, but the new line delimiter and HTTP one is carriage return and new line, and here we were reading only, we're expecting to have just a new line, so we are also changing that. So let's maybe define line delimiter for our request. Let's maybe call it HTTP new line separator, and it is something like that: carriage return and a new line. And as we remember, the optional body is separated by two new lines, two new HTTP lines. So let's maybe also create a variable for that, to call it something like HTTP body separator maybe, and we can concatenate just these two. Okay, what we have, we are reading request and we are using buffered reader. So let's change it to the input stream. Let's see. Let's call it stream. And here we're be reading just a byte. We don't know how many of them we need to read. So let's create a buffer. Let's maybe call it a buffer. And actually, can we know how many bytes do we need to read? I think stream have something like, I don't know if, yeah, it's up to the implementation to tell us whether we have bytes available or not. And probably in some cases, at least this is the case from my experience, sometimes it can return 0 bytes even though we have something available. So I would say that we need a variable for the default size of buffer, however we wanna call it. It will actually be also needed when we will be about to read response body. So let's maybe call it default, I don't know, buffer size, maybe default bucket size, something like that. And here we can have variable saying how many bytes we should read. So let's maybe call it to read, and if to read is 0, let's say default bucket size. Okay. Here we say to read, and right now I think we just need to say read. Right. Yeah, for now we can, it is returning how many bytes we have read, and I think we can ignore this for now. Or no, we should actually. So the actual, yeah, because the actual size of the bytes that we have read can be different than bytes that we expect to read, especially given when we will be using default bucket size. At the same time, I think that this method is returning -1. Yeah, -1 if there is no more data. So, and actually we can have here it is possible that we get some strange input stream and get no data. So I would also say that we should rename this method and say return unoptional maybe. Okay, and in the case of read being actually we can say that, because if you read nothing, there is nothing, so I mean 0 bytes. And okay, here I would say that we ignore. For now we can ignore such a request. So let's say just opt if it's empty. We just continue. We refactor this later. Alright, so here we return empty. That let's maybe create a method for that, because it will be too long. So just to read raw bytes. So let's say maybe read raw request head, because it will be without a body. We accept input stream, and basically we'll copy that. And yeah, in that case, I would say that we can return empty array. And in other case, I would say that if read is equals to read, we can just return buffer, because we have the data that we need. And in the other case, I would say that we should copy the array, but shorter length. So actually, how many bytes we got? Yeah, and that should give us, going back to this will certainly give us new line headers and whole body or the part of it. Depends how big the body is, and it can also depend on the network, because network packets are sent in parts depending on their size. So we may not get the whole body at once. We definitely should get new line and the headers at once, and yeah, we build on that this is the case. We'll test it anyways. So have that. So let's just call it, say, request head, let's say. Alright, and just to have previous functionality, we actually need to turn it into a string. So let's say request head. I would also specify character set. But actually, it should be ASCII, because this is how the header request line and headers are encoded. But we can have part of body here, so we should split it. But here we can we don't have the differentiation between lines, headers, and body. So how we can go about that? I would say that let's call it lines. I don't have idea for a good name. And let's call it, let's use HTTP new line separator. And here we have all of these lines, possibly with the body, but we don't care about that. And let's just assume that this is correct. And basically, line will be first line. And we also can have this with headers method, but here we will just give them something like that. Lines. Let's see. Is this correct? We have this line, header, then possibly two lines, but one of them will be empty. Okay, so we shouldn't have problems with that. So let's give it lines. Yeah, here we need to return an optional. Here we might have empty bytes. So let's say that if this is empty, let's return just empty. Here we need to wrap it in optional off. That, and we need to implement this method. and not this one. Headers into with headers. So this can stay. Here we need to ignore the first line because it's that, and we care only about headers. That's one. And the other thing is that we may have part of the body here, and we don't want to read that. So I would say that if the string is empty, we should probably stop reading it. So start with the first element here, not 0, because 0 is a status line, as I said. And we can just say, we can just create 4 like that. And we just modify that. So line as previously, but let's say that if line is empty, and we should break. And what else? Yeah, that should pretty much be it for now. I probably forgot about something, but we'll see. So this, I would say strip, maybe to remove any possible space. Alright, so let's just check if our previous functionality is working as expected. Okay, we are returning response, and seems that it works. We have the icon, we have headers. Yeah, so it works. So I think we can move to reading request body. But to do that, we need to know how many bytes we need to write. So basically there are two possibilities. One is that the client should send us content length in the headers. And the other is that there is something called the chunked response, but we will not support that. So basically, we assume that the content length header is sent, and only that we'll read it. So, but as you can see, the headers actually can be or cannot be capitalized. So I would also change it to reading. We should lower header key to avoid potential issues. Let's rebuild it. Alright, seems to work. So I would say that we need a variable for content, constant for something like content length header. what we will do is, where we are done with headers, we will say, or maybe we do this here, and also the more complex thing is that it's quite possible that here we actually have also part or whole body. So I would say something like that. Red body. This will be part of the body that we read previously, and it's quite possible that we have read whole body in this previous request, in the previous thread. Also here we need to tell how many bytes we expect. So maybe let's call it expected body length. Okay, and let's say body length. For that we actually say something like contact length headers. Yeah, right, maybe let's turn it into a method. So let's call it, I don't know, maybe get body expected body length, and we give it headers. And we got here, and there's a possibility of obviously that we not have this header, so I would say that in that case we return 0, and here I would say that if body length is greater than 0 we read it. Yeah, what we expect here, red body. Okay, so it's more complicated, I guess. Maybe what is complicated here? We have raw request head, and here in the read body method we expect to have body that we have, right? But only body. And here we have all of this. So we would and we want to have only that. So we just how we can achieve that? We can get index from here definitely because it's a string, and it should have these two new line separators if there is a body. So maybe let's create normal if. So let's just say something like that. And if body length is greater than 0, I will do that thing that I just described. In another case, we'll just have empty array. Okay, so here we need to get a part of the body that we read here. So we can have request head. Let's create a variable called maybe body start index, and let's take request head and say index of how we called this one. Okay, so obviously there's a possibility that we will not find this, and it will be -1 if I remember correctly. Yes, so let's say if body start index is greater than 0 actually, because we need to have something before that body, as we read request line and headers. In that case we have a body, so we will read it and we give it stream and expected body length. Yeah, and read body. We have an index of its start, so we should just say raw request head arise copy of range, I would say. Yeah, so raw request head body start index, and let's go until the end. So maybe format. Oh, that's not very. Maybe that's nested if. It's not that good, but better. So I don't know. Let's maybe also say body part or red body, and this will be it. Alright, and body will be just this. So what we did here, we just took raw request head, which you know what it is. It's a line, a request line, headers, potentially body. Yeah, and potentially body. We search for the start of the body in the request head, but stringified and coded in ASCII, as it should be according to the specs. And with that string we found an index of the start of the body, but actually, as I'm thinking about it, it will be index of the HTTP head body separator, and we need to skip this for side. So I would also say that we need HTTP head body separator, I know, bytes, because we need to skip them. Something like bytes, actually ASCII, and length. So we just have, maybe let's format right. We just have the number of bytes here that we should skip. We should skip here. We need to say, need to add that one. Alright, so this third body is body length, and and in this case, for now let's also return empty array. Okay, and ignoring refactoring because it's getting quite long and complicated. We need to implement this method. That really you can ignore, or maybe not. I would say that we need to say we need to get we need content length header, and if there is no one, we actually need to wrap it in the list because it's a multi-value map. Really assume that it has one element for now, and let's turn it into an integer, and try catch is really to ignore exceptions if the format is wrong. We don't care about that, we just return 0. Okay. Obviously we didn't implement the most important part, but for now let's just restart the server and make sure that everything works. Okay, everything works. So let's read the body. We have a stream, we have red body and expected body length. Okay, so we know that we can say that if red body is actually expected body length, we just return it because there is no need to write anything. And in other case, I would it's possible that we need to read it in a few packets because body can be arbitrarily large. So let's create a byte array output stream and call it maybe results. I think we can specify size. Okay, and we'll say that we write the first part, just body. It probably throws exception, yeah, so state that right now. Basically, I would say that we need a variable to say how many bytes we read. So something like read bytes, and while read bytes is less than expected body length, we will read bytes basically. And at the end, we just do results to byte array. Okay, so what do we need? We need a buffer. Okay. I would say that, yeah, we should create a buffer. Okay, maybe something simple without optimizing. So just a buffer with default packet size let's call it reads, because we will be reading bytes to that buffer. Maybe let's create it once. Okay, and then we will say to result we'll write it, but not everything. We write only from 0 to read bytes. Actually, also if it is larger than 0, because it can return -1 if there is no more data. So actually, I think we can, in other case, we can just break. And also, we know how many bytes we read, so let's add it to read bytes. Okay, and basically it should work. Let's see. Okay, now it works because we don't have regex body, but as previously, let's make a fetch using JavaScript. Let's say I have something here. We are on port 8080, methods can be post, body, let's send some kind of JavaScript object, I don't know, something like this. What is that? No. Okay. SSR, okay. HTTP, not HTTPS. Okay. Yeah. We didn't specify content length, so it wasn't read. But let's see if we even try to show a body where we have it, print requests. We don't. So I would say that if we have a body, maybe let's say something like that. Body is empty, and here let's naively assume that it will always be a string. And actually this can be UTF-8, anything really. For now, let's just assume that this is UTF-8. Okay. Let's see if it will show us that body is empty. Oh no. Okay, so why it works. Okay, content length is probably automatically sent by the the browser. So let's maybe, I don't know, send, ask here something. So it works. Alright guys, I think it's enough for today. See you next time.